This morning we have been focusing on a very, very sensitive issue of school-based sexual assaults with panelists ranging from the Basic Education Department and the Teddy Bear Clinic to the Film and Publication Board. Let's continue to focus on this topic, and we can look at how we can prevent cases of school sexual assaults. In studio, we are joined again by Mbuyiselo Botha, who's the Government and Media Liaison Specialist at the Sonke Gender Justice. And this time joining us on the panel is Tsholofelo Nakedi, who is a researcher at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Again, thank you both of you for being with us here on the program. Before we talk, let's recap some of the facts that came from our earlier discussions. We were talking about the Film and Publications Board, about the exposure of children to too much media, and that is the reality, is that it doesn't matter where you turn, Facebook, Twitter, emails, television, photographs, magazines, you name it, our children can see all of it. Films, online, pornography. It's just something that they are so exposed to that perhaps in my generation or in your generation, we never had the opportunity to see that. And that wasn't our reality, it is their reality. Also the fact that we want introduction of social workers in schools. And also there is so much that we spoke about in the previous interviews, but I think let's try and take it a little bit more forward and find out more issues that can be discussed. So we haven't really at this point looked at Tsholofelo. We haven't looked at the statistics on what are the causes for children to be involved in sexual assault. What does your research actually show?
I mean, with the intervention project that we had as an organization, one of the things that were really coming out is that sometimes we look at the school as an isolated entity, but it is actually part of a bigger community, and whatever happens in a particular community also filters back into the school. So what is important is that whatever children are exposed to in their homes, in their communities, also filters into the school. So it is very much important that whatever intervention that happens then doesn't only focus on the school, because children are part of the school from particular hours, and when they go back into the communities, then they're then exposed to such.
Yeah, indeed. Mbuyiselo?
Well, I think as earlier on I said about how, I mean, what we see in schools, Leon, are actually a microcosm. They mirror what's happening in our society. And I fully agree with Tsholofelo that these cases, we can't look at them in isolation. So you would need a multifaceted approach if you are to deal with, because the kids that are at school, they in fact are not doing this in a vacuum. They come from a particular context and the content. That's why if you are to succeed, you would have to ensure that all of these problems that they meet at home, you address them. And maybe that may be long term, you know. So, but short term, there are things that we can do at schools. And all of them being that, yeah.
One of the big issues as well, I spoke about what came out of our previous discussions, Mbuyiselo, was the fact that there is not a paternal role model in the family, in this family environment, the home environment that we talk about. How bad is the situation where the father is missing? Well,
it's bad, and because we know that statistics, I mean, have shown that the majority of households in South Africa are in fact led by women, and they also how overwhelmed women are. And in the program that we have what we call positive parenting or fatherhood, our view is that it's important that fathers get involved in the upbringing, not only as disciplinarians, you know, so that the whole model you talk about, that things like care work, and all of these, Leon, they actually go towards asking the question that fathers, the emotional connectedness, the involvement is actually critical, important, so that they offer the home support. We don't have to hear of fathers only when they are called upon to beat up children. How connected are we? Do I know the school homework? Do I know, do I give love? I mean, the emotional connectedness we're talking about. That's why for us, positive parenting, which also could discourage issues of violence, because what we tend to do, we tend to talk about corporal punishment when in essence it's violence that we do at schools. And more often, it's fathers that are always, expected to, you are the strong one, you must, ensure that you give out punishment or you discipline in the home. So we are saying that let's change that paradigm. Let's ensure that fathers, they actually become allies. They support women. They, in fact, ensure that the kids, they know what do our kids do, so that we don't only, we're not replaced by your malls, by your movies, but we are central in ensuring that we support our partners, because rearing children, it's not supposed to be a woman's issue only. It's our issue.
Indeed, it really is. And I mean, I think I can agree with you and support you on that one, because it really is. It's hard work to raise a child. I heard somebody saying the other day that the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, but the village is letting our children down. And that's what's going on, is that the village that these children are growing up in is setting a bad example. And this example is just being, they're acting out what they know, what they see, what they're subjected to. When we take a look at the Center for of Study of Violence and Reconciliation, are you finding that violent crimes are being committed by younger children? Is the age getting younger and younger and younger?
It is definitely getting younger. And I think one of the reasons is what has been alluded to earlier on, that, there's almost like the family institution has really been shaken, and this is where our children are socialized and are taught how to, and there's a lot of issues that are happening within the family unit. So I think that we really need to take a really closer look at families, because also one of the things is that we have discovered is that once a person starts to become a perpetrator at a very young age, when they grow up, if there are no interventions or no rehabilitation measures that are taken, they're going to just excel and be hardened criminals later on. So it is at this very age when they are young. It's a stage where they are vulnerable, but it's also a stage where it's a good time to model or kind of like create some good things out of them, So this is a good stage to start to intervene.
Okay. Where did things go wrong? I think let's go there. Let's keep it simple in terms of, we talk about this family unit that went wrong. What happened? Well,
there are lots of things that happened, but we should never forget, Wenelian, that apartheid has a lot to answer for. The dysfunctionalities that we find in our communities, because you see, it's very easy for us as South Africans to suddenly forget, the implications and the consequences of that system. And it is going to be very difficult for us to sort out what we have now if we don't go back and say, but hang on, the absence of fathers, the migratory labor system, where especially black men who continue to be at the receiving end of, unemployment, lack of role modeling. So all of those things have a lot to do with what we are in today. But, we have this, sudden amnesia, South Africans, that, well, let's move on. I want to argue this morning that we can't move on by forgetting the effect of that system that's going to be with us for many, many years. But that does not mean, Leon, we then fold our arms or throw our arms in despair and say there's nothing we can do. There are a lot of things we can do. And I said earlier, you had Soul City had a powerful program, the Soul Buddies. Yeah. We have I know that UNICEF had a program with the Department of Education, where you have the girls movement, the boys movement. Where are those? The peer education. The peer education can only happen again, Len, where we put resources. I keep on saying where we put resources and show that these things, they work. Because there's evidence they do work.
Yeah. What does research say? We talk about the effects of apartheid. Is it still lingering very, very badly in the family unit? Is that something that that is still at the heart of the violent society that we find ourselves living in?
I mean, definitely a lot has changed, but some of the things have really remained the same. I mean, the fact that most of a particular group in South Africa, it's still experiencing high rates of poverty. I mean, even living conditions where there's even no privacy, where children are able to see things and then they emulate them in the school system. I mean, that really, it's still a challenge, a big challenge that we still have to overcome as a society.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's living conditions, it's overpopulation. I think that can lead to, awful things. But there are many overpopulated countries, but it's still the essence of a violent society. That is what the problem is here, is this violent nature of the crimes committed. Because you go back to this one incident we're talking about, the young kid, one of the young boys actually stabbed the girl in her leg so she would open up her leg. In the other incidents we had these young boys raping another boy but using a broomstick.
Yeah, the one in Kimberley.
This is violence that I've never heard in other incidences.
And we haven't, as a society, said that we must take a look at how do we, at a programmatic level, I mean, how do we ensure that we really do something about, I mean, training the boy child, the girl child. And these things, are not things that you do overnight. These are also things that you don't do with a ticker box. These are programmatic. They need to be part of the system. Because if you do ticker box or calendar events, you surely stand the risk of losing the momentum, or there's no sustainability, because what you do is you go back and say, but I've done this, you don't go back and say, have I achieved anything? Am I succeeding? What are the gaps? How do I close the gaps? So you really need, I mean, the intervention of the programs in the schools about boy-child. What do we say? I mean, when you talk about socialization, what do we do? How do we best socialize the boy-child about issues of rejecting violence? The new values that this boy grows up and knowing that, look here, violence should not define who am I. That if I grow up in those communities that have glorified, that have normalized violence, how do I, as a young boy, and say, I don't want to be like them. Yes. I want to reject violence. But you then need training, you then need continuous workshop, the peer education. You need people outside who would come and say to the teachers, we want to journey with you, we want to help you, there's help there.
Yeah. I mean, coming back to the issue of violence, I feel like violence is a learned behavior, and we cannot now get surprised when we see children emulate what they see on a daily basis. I feel like South Africa is a country, we are a very violent country, that whenever we have issues, even when we have our own problems that we want, we easily resort to violence. Yeah. So young children copy what they see, and they do just that. And I feel like it's a conversation that we need to open up for us as South Africa to say, how do we deal with ourselves? How do we get to a point where we heal from our past? Like Mbuyiselo had said earlier on, that some of these things we've learned during the apartheid system. I mean, some of the behavior, it was necessary to fight a particular system, but however, it has carried on into the new South Africa, and young people are beginning to emulate that type of behavior.
I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. Even in the highest, most respected institution in our country, and I'm talking about Parliament, there is physical fighting happening in there. You go into townships where people are wanting their views to be heard, there is violence that's happening there. There is violence no matter where you turn. And we are a violent society, whichever way you look at it, and it's a problem. We actually have a clip we want to play now. It was from an interview we did last week when this actual story broke with one of the psychologists. She gave us her view. Let's see if perhaps we can comment a little bit about this.
Another important risk factor is a history of victimization, where the child himself or herself has been exposed to sexual abuse or has been exposed to any kind of sexually explicit material via television, cell phones, chat lines, via the social media. All of this could contribute to children acting out on other children.
All right, no, that's not the psychologist we spoke to. That was just our guest that we had now on the panel. We're talking about Dr. Shahida Omar. She's from the Teddy Bear Clinic, and I mean, that is, you know, that's a big discussion we had, and we had it for quite a while. What our children are subjected to, not only by watching, physically watching, but it's also, you know, social media.
Yeah.
How does this affect them?
Yeah, I think she mentioned something that is quite important, that there's actually a very thin line between a victim and a perpetrator, because sometimes we are looking at these children as perpetrators, but we don't know what they've endured, and you are most likely to repeat the behavior that you have also have seen or have experienced yourself. So that's why even when we talk about intervention programs, we really need to look at how we make sure that these children go through some kind of rehabilitation, because they just do what they've done. If a child has been exposed to sexual abuse, for instance, it's because they've normalized it, they think this is how things are, it's very easy for them to then do it to the next other child.
Yeah.
So that also speaks volume.
Yeah.
I think what she said was quite profound.
Yeah.
One person on Twitter, and my Twitter feed is so many, it's just full of so many conversations here at the moment, whether it be about the currency or what we're talking about. But somebody mentioned that one thing that is severely missing is corporal punishment in schools. Taking that out of the system has almost given the teachers less ability to discipline children, and also the fact that religious instruction was also something that has been removed, and that our children are losing out so much. What do you think?
I have difficulties with corporal punishment.
Okay.
Because you see, we call it corporal punishment. We have been very euphemistic. In fact, Leon, it's violence. Okay. But it's violence. But you see, we use words that suits us. It's violence that we do to children because of the control, the power. I mean, there's also no evidence, and in the work we do, of anti-violence in the schools. Our view is that there is no evidence that actually says that children grow up well-rounded human beings because they were beaten. Yeah. In fact, what it does is you are normalizing violence. You're putting it, you're using words that may even glorify violence. Then, as South Africans, we need to be creative, innovative. Let's find methods. If this child does not understand, what is it that I can do to assist the child? Because the problem may be how I communicate with the child. And it doesn't necessarily follow that when I beat up the child to a pulp. And we know the instances where children get extremely abused in the name of corporal punishment or discipline. So I'm saying that as South Africans, let's go back and say there are other methods we can use, engaging children. Yeah. I mean, so that we do not resort to that which you know best, which is being violent, because we are violating children. And maybe there's truth in the importance of religious education, about the values and the morals. But I'm just saying that these are things that must be open to.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Mbuyiselo Botha, thank you very, very much. Government and Media Liaison Specialist with Sonke, Gender Justice, and Tsholofelo Nakedi, who is from the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Thank you so very, very much for joining us. And also thank you for corresponding with us and writing into Twitter. And so many people writing in. But here's one that stood out for me, saying that after a few tweets saying, my point is that if the adults are punished accordingly with rape or abuse charges, kids will realize that these crimes are severe. So the justice system also needs to play a massive part in punishing people for committing these crimes. Thank you for watching, everybody. I know it's been a tough topic, but an essential topic to have. Have a good day. Newsroom is up next. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early, 6 o'clock.